Americans are speaking with confidence once again. They have the backing of a true leader, which is already impacting cities and communities in all 50 states. I want to move to Chicago, where residents are absolutely fed up. They've suffered through that lunatic Lori Lightfoot, only to watch her replacement, Mayor Brandon Johnson, turn their city into a garbage dump. My city, my hometown, actually. Taxpayers are not biting their tongues anymore. They know that with Trump back in office in D.C., the shift away from big government and government neglecting the people, that shift starts right now. Listen to these furious and often silenced Chicago residents absolutely torch their arrogant mayor right to his face.
Good afternoon.
I want to know, how does it feel that Trump is in office right now? You see the Mayor Brandon Johnson, you underestimate us. You underestimate the black people, and you underestimate Chicago Red. We're the thorn in your side, and we're going to be the thorn on everybody else in this council member side, too. If you don't stop what you're doing, we're going to take matters in our own hand, and we're going to stop it.
Now, think about this, folks. They called Trump a racist. These are African Americans lacing into the African American mayor of the city of Chicago, plain and simple. Mayor Johnson, get with it or get the hell out. This isn't Biden's America anymore. Under Trump, there's going to be no room for error. You're either going to work for those who elected you as an elected politician, or you'll be voted out. In fact, incumbents had one of the worst slaughters in modern history in the vote in 2024. Incumbents got wiped out at a higher rate than maybe ever before, but certainly in modern history. And that was proven on the national stage, like I said, just 2 weeks ago. Americans have had it. We've loved every second of this return to normalcy. And it's only 2 weeks old. This is only the very beginning. I've been telling you all about the dysfunction and the destruction of the corporate American media, the propaganda media, the legacy BS media. And let me tell you, regular voting Americans have had their hands all over that one too. The ratings of the major networks have absolutely plummeted, forcing certain executives to make some very difficult decisions. Over at CNN, for example, Chris Wallace, the longtime Foxer who went to CNN, was just shown the door. Of course, that's not how he phrased it. He said, according to Chris, earlier this week, Chris Wallace shocked audiences by announcing that he was leaving CNN to go into podcasting. Remember, he said he was going to be a podcaster? Right. He made the decision to go into podcasting all by himself. Wink, wink. Well, I'm sure Chris Wallace just woke up and decided, all right, I've had enough of my incredible $7 million a year salary and the freedom to lie and spew BS on air whenever I want. I'm going to give that all up and start over in podcasting. No one's buying it, Chris. You got chopped. Just own it. Of course, he's going to try and join us here in the digital world, which is about as smart as anyone could possibly be. By the way, he's 78 years old. Now, he probably doesn't know what a podcast is, but he's going to act like he had a complete say in his leaving CNN, which is absolutely laughable. He's the first major domino to fall over at CNN. Trust me, there will be several others, big names, maybe Anderson Cooper, I don't know, maybe Rachel Maddow over at MSNBC, who makes $30 million a year working one night a week. 1 night a week, $30 million. I'm guessing she's going to go, or cut her salary. But if you want to know why networks like CNN and MSNBC are moving away from people like Chris Wallace, just flash back to the interview Chris Wallace did with Trump when he was a member. Chris was a member of the Fox News team. Remember this?
I think we have one of the lowest mortality rates in the world. We're going to take a look.
We had 900 deaths on a single day.
We will take a look.
This week.
Ready?
You can check it out.
Could you please get me the mortality rate?
Yeah.
Kaylee's right here. I heard we had one of the lowest, maybe the lowest mortality rate anywhere in the world. You have the numbers, please? Because I heard we had the best mortality rate.
The case fate of similarly situated countries, as Dr. Burks points out, and this is
number one low mortality rate. I hope you show this in there because it shows what fake news is all about. Okay,
I don't think I'm fake news, but we'll put we'll put our stats on.
You said we had the worst mortality rate in the world, and we have the best.
Folks, that crap, the fake news, isn't going to survive a second Trump presidency. That's why these mega networks are trimming the fat now. They know that this president will go right after them by name. Better to fire them now than to end up as a soundbite and maybe save a few bucks in the interim. Trump's election is having international ripple effects too. Listen to Justin Trudeau from the North who's clearly hanging on for dear life right now, making a groundbreaking announcement about immigration.
Immigration. Let's talk about it. In the last 2 years, our population has grown really fast, like baby boom fast. And increasingly, bad actors like fake colleges and big chain corporations have been exploiting our immigration system for their own interests. So we're doing something major. We're reducing the numbers of immigrants that will come to Canada for the next 3 years.
So, well, you get this straight. Trump's been elected, not even sworn in yet, and Justin Trudeau is now picking up on some of Trump's immigration policy. Like already, I mean, he pointed a finger at Trump, calling him a racist and a bigot. Now, Canada, these politicians around the world are listening. Finally, they're listening to Trump, that he's not just some lunatic over in America. He's actually saying what the people, the voting public in America, want him to say and do. And it's something. Turns out you can't just welcome whomever you want into the country, open the borders, because residents are voters, and residents don't like that. The immediate impact of the red wave we all just witnessed here in America is visible in all areas of our society, all areas around the world, too. Our public events are louder and louder. Our media is slowly cutting ties with the dead weight, even though now it may be too late. And our neighbors are learning from the mistakes that just got Kamala Harris bounced from the White House in bloody fashion. Figuratively, I mean. Folks, the improvements that Trump promised have already begun. And he hasn't even started yet. He hasn't even raised his right hand on January 20th on the backside of Congress being sworn in. So sit back, relax, enjoy this victory lap. Just know, by day one, America will have already shifted, and Trump will have 4 years to bring back our once great country's greatness back. All right, I'd like to thank Goya Food. By the way, the conglomerate, this multinational major Hispanic food company, is our sponsor, and we're really proud to have them on board because in 2021, Goya launched Goya Cares. It's a global initiative to protect children and educate children on mental health. Goya Cares is providing schools and community centers with a preventative education curriculum and a free assembly that includes the viewing of Goya Cares Press Pause. Press Pause is intended to raise awareness regarding mental health issues, abuse, and bullying among children, among teens, and within our communities. Press Pause is an educational film following a young 15-year-old Sofia Rodriguez as she navigates adolescence, self-doubt, and an abusive relationship amid her parents' turbulent divorce, set within the cultural context of her Hispanic family. The film explores her discomfort with the unwanted attention from her uncle and the pressures of maintaining a facade of perfection in high school. And it introduces Press Pause campaign promoting kindness and advocacy, highlighted by Sophia leaving a note saying, "You matter," for a bullied peer. The film encourages open family communication about mental health and culminates in Sophia's transformative realization of her right to seek help. Through the power of empathy and small acts of kindness, Press Pause displays the importance of being proactive in supporting one's community and underscores the critical importance of self-advocacy. The folks at Goya are spending literally millions upon millions of their own money to bring out this great, great cause, Goya Cares Press Pause film. So, folks, check it out. So, you know this, right? Cigarettes were once physician-tested and physician-approved. True story. In the 1950s, doctors not only supported smoking, they came out in full force behind smoking in commercials.
Time out for many men of medicine usually means just long enough to enjoy a cigarette. And because they know what a pleasure it is to smoke a mild, good-tasting cigarette, they're particular about the brand they choose. In a repeated national survey, doctors in all branches of medicine, doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?"
Seems odd, right? Seems really weird to watch that, but really fascinating because once upon a time, doctors came out and supported big tobacco. You never thought of that, right? They did it as long as they could because once irrefutable, undeniable evidence came out that showed just how unhealthy smoking really was, that cigarettes cause serious irreversible damage to the heart and lungs, they could no longer support the industry. Sure, didn't really stop people from smoking. They did so at their own risk, despite the fact that the Surgeon General warned them against doing so. Smoking indoors on flights even, in offices, in building stairwells continued, and then it became more and more controlled by government. Smoking became relegated to small areas in restaurants, and then no smoking indoors at all. And we all lived through that. But the point is, before we knew about the dangers smoking imposed on our health, it was not only the norm, but doctors fully supported smoking on national television and in newspapers all over the country, all over the world, really. This is the ultimate lesson. The fact is, we don't know, do we? I mean, isn't it the very point of science and medicine to learn as we go? So what happened once the tobacco industry had no choice but to admit that even though their product wasn't healthy, it was still cool. So you do so at your own risk. Through the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, movies and television shows still depicted smokers left and right. You couldn't be a gangster without a cigarette dangling from your mouth. Any moody conversation had plumes of smoke around the actors' faces. But now, it's an undeniable fact. If you smoke, you're more than likely going to shorten your own life and certainly the quality of it. So what happened? You take away tobacco as a guilt-free pleasure. What's next? Where can we find our profits? Said the doctors and the corporations. Something people can't live without. What is it? Food. After all, we can't survive without food. And it's best to make it as affordable as possible, right? Doesn't matter how, though. Does it or did it? But what if we make it addictive? What if we made food addictive? What if we can help corporations make a ton of money off of food that's both easy to make and Americans can't live without it? It's kind of like cigarettes. It's kind of brilliant what happened next. That is, if profit is your only interest to the detriment of mankind, they managed to completely restructure how Americans think of food. Adding sugar left and right, processed addictive chemicals. We used to eat real food. We used to eat meat, cheese, eggs, milk, butter, fruit, vegetables. Americans were thinner. We were healthier. We lived longer. There was room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. Oh, too much butter is bad for you. Got it. Too much of anything is bad for you. Okay, but what happened next was positively sinister. And we're allowed to question it as the truth becomes clearer. Sugar, carbs, processed corn syrup, soy, artificial color, flavoring. When and why did all this become okay to serve and sell to the American people? Well, it did, changing the way we think about food, processed seed oils, corn, soy. The moral of the story is this. We weren't even able to question it because the ingredients were found in everything real fast. Everything Americans wanted, everything we could afford, cereal, bread, sauces, so-called nutrition bars were full of sugar and unnatural ingredients. No one else in the world eats the way we do. Think about that. No one else in the world eats the way we do. Why isn't it okay to question why we eat the way we eat in America? Why isn't it okay to ask ourselves why the least expensive food available to Americans is filled with chemicals and ingredients we don't even fully understand how they affect our bodies? We're getting sicker and sicker. So isn't it okay to ask ourselves why? We should be allowed to question the state of our food supply, shouldn't we? We should be allowed to question the drugs we are told to put into our bodies, because a lot of times these things act like drugs. We should be allowed to question the status quo. That is what RFK Jr. is saying. That is at the core of what RFK is saying and doing. And yet the media, our agencies, they're freaking out. President Trump picked RFK Jr. to be his health secretary, and the media lost their minds. The leftists lost their minds. They're positioning RFK as a danger to the country. Sound familiar? Because that's what they always say when someone comes along, a disruptor, and threatens the status quo. Look at Trump. And you always have to ask yourself this: why? Why are they so threatened? Why are they so triggered What exactly is making all these people so nervous? Well, for one thing, there's an ongoing disinformation campaign, the left's favorite word. Anyway, it's being spread about what RFK is actually talking about and proposing. So let's get into it a little bit. So what does RFK want to do? Well, he wants to address corruption in our healthcare and corruption in our government health agencies. Sounds good to me. I don't know about you. Fine, let's do it. First time someone decided to do it on a high level. You can just imagine the beads of sweat forming on foreheads right now in anticipation. These people have been unchecked for years. Corruption, bureaucracy. All you have to do is look at how the COVID pandemic was handled. And that's all you need to know. That's all you need to know to understand why we need someone like RFK to look into it. RFK Jr. also wants to go back to evidence-based research. Evidence-based. And he wants to fund research that will help us answer some of the big questions we have. Now ask yourself, why does that threaten people? What's wrong with that? I'll tell you why. Because big corporations, big pharma, big food processors are threatened by it because they're making bank on this. They're making bank without testing any of this stuff. And RFK says, you want to do that, that's fine, but we're going to look into what is actually happening to our people's bodies when you put those dyes and colorings and additives and preservatives into our food supply. And by the way, it's unique to America, folks. And I'll get to that in a second. And he also wants to address the chronic child disease epidemic. Child disease. There are poisons, actual poisons, in what Americans are feeding our children. Kids are being given medications without hesitation. Ritalin, Adderall. The American Academy of Pediatrics is recommending Ozempic, the aggressive weight loss drug for children as young as 12 years old. And they're doing clinical trials for children as young as 6 years old. 6 years old. First grade. Ozempic. Why aren't we looking at diets? What's in the food that's making a 6-year-old child a candidate for a weight loss drug that Oprah Winfrey is using? Why is talking about health and chronic issues, why is that political? Why is there so much uproar and panic? Always do this. Always follow the money. Ask yourself, who profits from making Americans eat food that costs nearly nothing to make? Well, the food industry, the big food does. Ask yourself this. Just think, who would stand to benefit from making Americans sick through eating food filled with excess sugar, sodium, and cancer-causing chemicals and oils? Big pharma, big medicine. So big food and big pharma are profiting off what's going on. And RFK wants to look into it, and they're freaking out. This is the stickiest subject of all here, too, vaccines. This headline in nearly every single legacy media outlet today. Caroline Kennedy calls cousin RFK Jr.'s vaccine views dangerous, except that he stated very clearly that he's not anti-vaccine. RFK has clearly stated that he's not interested in removing or taking away vaccines. However, isn't it worth looking at the process of vaccinating our children? The way that they're vaccinated nowadays is far more aggressive and frequent compared to how it was done in the past, even just a couple decades ago. And there are certain statistics that need to be looked at and researched. Isn't that what science is all about anyway? You have an idea, you have a thesis, you have an idea, and you research it to make sure it works. Trying new approaches and then figuring out, based on research, what's right and what's wrong, particularly if there's a recognized spike in certain conditions, and especially if it's in children. No one's saying it's time to bring back polio, measles, or rubella. Absolutely not. But why aren't we allowed to ask these questions without being triggered by the left? Well, we know the answer. It's power, control, and green, money. That's always the answer, right? RFK Jr. is not a danger. The real danger is that power, money, and control is more important to these big pharmas and these big food processors than our medical freedom and our decisions to choose what's right for our own health. We just went through something that will be studied in decades and centuries to come as the most reprehensible period in health and government control ever witnessed in history, ever. Economy-killing lockdowns, ignoring natural immunity, small children forced to wear masks, even in swimming pools or in parks, or playing sports, being forced to vaccinate or be fired or shunned from society. And I do recall actual doctors and scientists going on national television and suggesting that those who don't wear masks or get the jab should not be allowed out or even be put in camps, in internment camps. Doctors saying that on TV. I remember Jimmy Kimmel saying, if you don't get vaccinated, you shouldn't be allowed in an emergency room if you're having a stroke. Can you imagine this? They all lost their collective minds. All of that was based on so-called science, and when the backtrack started happening, when they realized that they were wrong, and once we learned the truth, we didn't know. We're all learning as we went. Shouldn't the same apply to all things? To our food, our medicine, how much we're medicating the population? The food pyramid is slowly but surely being uncovered as a total and utter sham. We've been told for decades that the foods that are actually unhealthy were the foods that we should be eating the most of. Children went from eating eggs for breakfast to eating sugary cereals in abundance. And now kids are sicker. And aren't we allowed to ask why? Isn't RFK Jr. allowed to ask why? Ask the question, what's in it? What are those things that are in it do to the body? Big pharma pushed opioids on anyone and everyone, even for the smallest bouts of pain. They claimed it wasn't addictive. We all know that was BS. And millions have become sick and have died as a result of those lies. Millions. This is a fact. We're sicker. Americans are getting sicker and sicker. Early onset Alzheimer's has tripled. Cancer in young Americans under the age of 50 has gone up by 79%. Under the age of 50, up by 79%. Cancer. Yeah, we're living longer, but at what quality are we living? 40% of Americans, of our kids, have a mental health issue diagnosis. 40%. 4 in 10. Almost half. 1 in 5 of our children is on some sort of medication. We're literally drugging our children to death. This has become the norm. Aren't we allowed to question what's happening and ask why? Isn't it more dangerous staying firmly on a path, COVID vaccinations, that isn't working? We have to ask ourselves, who benefits from us being sicker, fatter, more unhappy? Every single mood is diagnosed as a treatable disease with a drug. Seasonal disorder. I'm sad because it's cold and dark outside. Well, here's a medication for you. And we're considered dangerous for questioning it. Isn't that fact the most dangerous thing of all? That they want us not to question their science. Shouldn't we bring things together, various scientific minds and researchers, to help us get on the right path? Right now, we have asked ourselves why legacy media is working so hard to make Americans discount what RFK is putting out there.
It's why do we have Fruit Loops in this country that have 18 or 19 ingredients, and you go to Canada and it's got 2 or 3?
Quoting, he was wrong on the ingredient count. They're roughly the same, but Canadian versions does have natural colorings made from blueberries and carrots, while the U.S. product contains red dye number 40, yellow number 5, and blue number 1, as well as butylated hydroxytoluene, or BHT, a lab-made chemical that is used for freshness, according to the ingredient label, said the New York Times. He was wrong on the ingredient count. Yes, hyperbole to get the point across, get your attention. Thank you so much for the correction, New York Times. This is coming from a newspaper that happily peddled untruths for years now about getting and having a vaccination. Pulling teeth. But it is a fact that the Canadian version doesn't use the dangerous colorings we use. Got it. BHT used for freshness? What the hell is that? BHT, the preservative that's been found to cause cancer in rats? That one? How dare you question it, New York Times? Why are legacy media so keen to nip the whole RFK as health secretary thing in a bud? Could it be that big pharma and big food literally pay all the bills and keep the lights on for the legacy media? I mean, one of the suggestions by RFK is to stop big pharma from advertising on TV. Can you imagine what kind of dent in their income and their profits that would be? An already struggling industry, losing viewership due to eroding trust thanks to blatant media lies. Hey, just ask questions here, right? We ask ourselves a very important question, though. Why are they so against it? Why are they so worried about it? And the answer is always, inevitably, comes back to one thing and one thing only: money. RFK isn't the danger. A sick society however, absolutely is. The danger isn't the person asking the questions. It's almost always the groups in question. They don't care if we're sick as long as they make money. And that is more than certainly and absolutely worth the questioning. Follow the panic, and the real answers are never too far behind. All right, folks, before we go, Jen Psaki might have given us an ironic quote, maybe even the quote of the year. Listen to this.
Look, I think Democrats are in the wilderness, as you just said before. There is no clear leader of the party. Joe Biden is going to be out of office shortly. Kamala Harris just lost the election. There are a lot of governors and other people who might emerge, maybe people we don't know about yet. Right. But there is no clear leader of the party right now.
Do you hear that, Democrats? Democrats are in the wilderness. Interestingly enough, Jen, you are completely correct, which is why I want to end today with a very rare sight. An elusive, often hidden creature was spotted deep in the Amazon rainforest, a creature that is almost never seen by the public, making this video footage some of the rarest and clearest to ever exist. Oh, look at that. That's one Joe Biden, who for whatever reason is aimlessly wandering around the Amazon rainforest. Hopefully they have old Joe microchipped or something. A low jack him. Low jack him. I heard the depths of the Amazon can get pretty dangerous. That's it for us. Bowling out for a Monday. Never forget, subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe to the show. We're growing. We love you. We want you with us. Stay with us. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe on Rumble, iTunes, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. Join us. We're growing like crazy. See you tomorrow, folks. Bowling out.